5 years ago, my next-door neighbor, Charles on the paperwork, reported his 14-year-old son missing. He called the police. It was on the news. Everyone talked about it. My wife and I felt sick for them, tried to help however we could. As the months turned into years with no word, we assumed they'd slowly accepted the worst. We never had the nerve to ask whether they'd ever found a body. Every so often, Charles and his wife Kathy would invite us over for a barbecue. They weren't the same people. Kathy went quiet, smaller somehow, and Charles had become awkward and jittery. That kind of grief changes people. We accepted that and tried to be kind. Then last week, everything shifted. I was taking out the garbage when Charles called to me and asked to borrow a shovel. I ran to grab my best shovel without thinking. He thanked me like a man relieved, said he had some yard work and would return it tomorrow, then disappeared into his backyard. From an upstairs window, I have a clear view into their yard. I watched him digging a huge hole, shovelfuls of earth, slow and awkward. He's 56. He was struggling. I went to fetch my second shovel to help. I walked into his yard and called his name. He looked up, dropped my shovel as if it burned him, and hurried over. No, it's okay, Tim. I got it. Please just leave, he said, eyes wild. I will not allow you to use that shovel in my backyard, he added, pointing at the gate as though I were a dog. I was so taken aback, I left without a word. Back at the window, I watched him work for another half hour. When he finally stopped, he scanned the surrounding houses like a man checking to see if he'd been watched. Then he spotted me at the window. I pretended to walk away casually, but my heart was a fist in my throat. He was doing something he did not want anyone to see. I kept glancing out, waiting. He paused until darkness. At 1:30 a.m., I heard the hollow thud of a shovel hitting soil. It was too dark from the upstairs window, so I crept outside and peered over the fence. Moonlight picked out his silhouette as he worked, every movement loud in the quiet night. When he went back into the house, I slipped into his yard to see what he dug. The moonlight revealed a corner of black garbage bag peeking from the dirt at the bottom of the hole. My skin went cold. I looked at the back door, then at the hole, and debated for what felt like an hour. 3 quick looks, really, whether to pry the bag open. I ran back across to my yard. Seconds later, he came out again, but not to dig. He moved to the far side of the house and didn't return. I climbed into bed and tried not to wake my wife, but sleep didn't come. Morning, the hole was patched over and his SUV sat in the street instead of the driveway. No sign of the bag. No sign of me being alone with a suspicion that would not leave me. Whatever he'd been digging up might have been his son. Maybe he'd removed whatever was down there and driven it away to dump it somewhere else. Maybe I was a fool, imagining sinister meanings into a man's strange behavior. Call me crazy. I haven't told a soul, not my wife, not anyone. Charles never returned my shovel. He's been avoiding me since. Yesterday, I looked across to his house and caught him at one of his windows, staring straight into mine. When he saw me, he immediately shut the blinds, midday blinds snapping closed like the end of an accusation. I'm terrified. If there's a body in that yard, what am I supposed to do with that knowledge? If I say nothing and it's true, I live beside a man who buried his child. If I tell someone and it's wrong, I ruin lives. And if I confront him, what then? He's shorter than me, but something in him has changed. There's a hardness now, a secrecy that smells like old dirt and colder things. I can't stop seeing that black plastic peeking from the earth. I can't stop hearing the shovel hit the ground at 1:30 a.m. I don't know if I want the truth, but I don't know how to keep living next to a man who looks at my window and shuts his blinds like a verdict. I've lived in 3 houses in my life, 2 with my family, and the one I live in now by myself. The first house held the first 15 years of my life, the second the next 7. This story happened in that first house, when I was 15, in the last few months before we moved. We were never close with the neighbors. There were 2 boys next door, Eric and Todd, who lived with their dad. My brother and I had maybe spoken to them once or twice in our entire lives, though we knew their names. One afternoon, my brother and I were shooting hoops in the driveway when Todd wandered over and started talking. I don't remember the exact words, but the first thing he asked was whether we were really moving. I did most of the talking. I was older, so that's how it went. By the end of the conversation, he invited us to go with him and Eric to the river in the woods to shoot BB guns the next day. I said yes. My little brother, 5 years younger, begged to come at the last second. Todd shrugged and said it was fine. An hour before dusk the next day, they rang our doorbell. Our parents didn't know we were leaving. Seeing Todd and Eric in full camo, carrying a duffel bag, was unsettling and almost ridiculous at the same time. We smirked at each other, trying not to laugh as we walked to the woods. We had barely said a dozen words when we reached the river. Todd dropped the duffel on the ground and unzipped it. Eric snapped a branch from a tree and lobbed it into the current, then, suddenly serious, grabbed a loaded gun from a bag and started firing at trees across the water. Todd told us the guns were real. My chest tightened. The laughter vanished. I took the gun from my brother and shoved both weapons back into the bag. "We're not comfortable. We're leaving," I said. Eric stopped shooting but stared at us with a look that was half anger, half contempt. One of them spat a curse as we walked away. I felt it then. Something about those boys was wrong. I told my brother never to speak to them again. That night at dinner we called them weird, but we didn't tell our parents about the guns. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a cold breeze on my face. My window was open all the way. I sat up and felt something hard press against the back of my head. Someone breathed right behind me, whispering, "SH, it was Todd." I didn't scream. I don't know why I didn't, maybe shock, maybe disbelief. He hissed that if I told anyone, especially their dad, about the guns or the visit, he would come back and kill me and my whole family. My voice shook when I said, "Okay." He shoved me with the gun before slipping back out the window and into the night. After that, for months, either Todd or Eric would be standing at a certain window in their house, staring into my or my brother's room. Their faces were calm, almost casual, but those stares felt like promises. A week before we moved, something worse happened. Around 1 in the morning, a rock hit my window. I opened it, and there was Todd, pistol aimed at my room. I remember the flash of metal and the cold that ran through me. I dove to the floor and listened as the two boys laughed, cruel and bright. I heard one of them call me a filthy name and felt more afraid than I ever had. There were 2 more nights of close harassment that week, things small and sour that made the house feel dangerous. When we finally moved, it felt like survival. We never told anyone. Not our parents, not the police. My brother and I carried the secret away with us. Those boys were trouble. Not the kind you could report and have fixed, but something meaner, something that fed on the small mercies of a quiet neighborhood. We were lucky to get out when we did. 2 weeks ago, something happened that still keeps me awake at night. I've never liked my neighbors. Fresh out of college, living on my own, I had to settle for a rundown neighborhood, the only place I could afford. On one side, I have people blasting music at all hours. On the other side, the creepiest duo I've ever met. It's 2 women. The older one, probably in her 60s, never smiles, never greets anyone, and frankly doesn't seem all there. The younger one is maybe in her 30s or 40s and clearly suffers from severe mental issues. I have no idea if they're mother and daughter, sisters, or just caretaker and patient. What I do know is this. I've seen the older woman restraining the younger one during violent outbursts, holding her back as she rocked, screamed, and made guttural noises. Sometimes the younger woman would lock eyes with me, point, and mutter to the older one while glaring at me like I was the source of her rage. More than once, I went inside just to escape that stare. One night, their shouting got unbearable. The younger woman shrieking, the older one yelling in frustration. It went on for nearly an hour. I'd had enough. I stormed over and pounded on their door. The older woman opened it with a look of pure contempt. I asked as calmly as I could if they could quiet down. She tilted her head down, raised her eyebrows, like I had just insulted her existence. Then the younger woman appeared, screaming over and over, "How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?" Her face twisted with rage. The older woman held her back, eyes burning into mine, before slamming the door in my face. Back inside, I felt like I'd accomplished nothing, but at least they went silent. I fell asleep, only to wake up at 3 a.m. Something had stirred me. I thought I heard movement downstairs. I listened at my bedroom door, nothing. I went back to bed. 20 minutes later, I woke again. The room was dark. My body froze before my mind caught up. Something was wrong. I grabbed my phone for a light, but didn't turn on right away. My eyes darted to every corner, searching for movement. The silence was suffocating. Then I heard it. Breathing. Too close. My phone's light clicked on. At the edge of my bed, pressed against the wooden frame, was a face. Pale, wide-eyed, twisted into a grotesque grin. The younger woman. The instant the light hit her, she shrieked, a high-pitched, unhinged scream, like some creature recoiling from the sun. I screamed too, stumbling out of bed, crashing into the floor, scrambling toward the door. I looked back just once. She was crawling after me, her scream never breaking. I slammed the door shut, heart pounding, and fled downstairs. I locked the door to the upper floor as her fists pounded against it. Her voice was nothing but jumbled curses and primal howls. I called the cops. When they arrived, I told them she lived next door, that she was dangerous. The older woman rushed over, begging the officers to let her stay. Her voice was desperate, but her eyes were full of pure hatred, locked on me like a curse. The police didn't budge. They restrained the younger woman, dragged her off, and asked if I wanted to press charges. The older woman's glare cut into me like knives as they waited for my answer. I said no. Her expression never changed. The younger woman was taken away, but her caretaker never stopped staring. She watched the police car leave. She watched me. Then she slowly turned, walked back to her house, and minutes later drove off into the night. They both still live next door. And now, every night when I close my blinds, I swear I can feel her eyes, those hateful burning eyes, trying to pierce through the walls of my house. I'm seriously considering moving. Because one thing has become terrifyingly clear: the younger woman isn't the only dangerous one.